Soul Collective community, you are in for such a special treat today. We are joined by somebody who has deeply inspired my life as well as thousands of people around the world. Today, we're going to be exploring the energy codes, the 7-step system to awaken your spirit, heal your body, and live your best life. I'm joined by Dr. Sue Morter, an international speaker, master of bioenergetic medicine, and quantum field visionary. She is the author of The Energy Codes, an instant national bestseller. Her globally taught Energy Codes coursework teaches individuals how to clear subconscious memory blockages and how to master the energetics of their lives. Dr. Sue, thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure and delight. I look forward to seeing where we get to go with our conversation.
Yeah, there's so much to cover. And I want to ask you first, is everything energy? And what does it mean to shift our focus from object to subject?
Yes, everything in the universe is energy. And this is something that people don't really understand. They don't really get that the chair that they're sitting in right now, everyone, the chair you're sitting in is made out of energy. The computer screen or the phone screen or whatever it is that you're watching or what you're listening through is also made out of energy. The car that we drive, the emotions that we have, the thoughts that we think, the physical body that we are in, all of it is just energy. Physical form, physical matter is compressed energy. And so when we start to realize that everything is energy and energy is always in motion, it's moving and it's reproducing and it's always alchemizing itself into different forms and structures, then we realize that our thoughts and our emotions and our life experience can also shapeshift if we allow that to be a living, breathing fact of our lives. And so when we talk about subject and object, it's kind of they're interrelated in that we can direct our energy to move and to be allocated in different aspects of life easily. If we put our attention on our inner body, our energies rush into the inner core of our body. If we put our attention out to the outer world, onto someone else or some story or some part of our past or some worry about the future, our energy literally rushes to accommodate where our focus is. And so it is ours to learn how to direct our attention in an ongoing fashion in a manner that serves the life that we're truly intending to be living. And a byproduct of that is life really has no choice but to respond.
Yes,
That's
I love that so much. And I feel like we can't have enough reminders to call our energy back. We're living in a day and time where there is so much where we're go, go, go. And I mean, I will just simply repeat the mantra like calling my energy back here and now, completely, fully in this present moment. And I feel like it's the same of like really returning back to subject.
Yes, exactly. So when we have our attention on self, it's on subject. When we let our mind go onto all sorts of other, forms, like we were speaking about the past, the future, the relationship that's a challenge, the work that's driving us crazy. When our energies go to that, it disperses. And when we're dispersed, we don't feel whole. We can't feel a sense of self-esteem or self-worth because we can't feel. And so often people then start thinking in an effort to override the uncomfortable feeling that they're having. And we become then addicted to thinking. And then we start writing stories to try to accommodate a better experience somehow. And none of it is the answer. The answer is to drop that whole pattern, drop back onto subject rather than the object that we've directed our attention onto. And by dropping onto subject, we then start to, the energies literally rush back home. And as they do, we automatically have a subconscious and then a conscious sensation of greater well-being. and an anchored sensation in this life, where we can walk and talk in a in a fluid manner and be present for things instead of worrying about or trying to control our circumstances so that we can feel safe. It's an entirely unnecessary approach to life that so many people plug into. And all we have to do is learn how to drop back onto self, onto subject, and learn how to breathe in a manner that allows for the integration of all of this to happen, so that we have access to our power and our wisdom and our ability to speak our truth and our ability to feel and exchange in an unconditional loving manner, and be innovative and creative and ingenious, really. So it's just a matter of learning how to put those pieces together.
Yeah, easier said than done. I'm curious, why do you think it is that we can't feel fully when our energy is dispersed?
The sensory nervous system is designed to pick up on a stimulus. And when our energy is dispersed, there's not as much of an essence moving through the core of the body, at this deep energetic level. And so the sensory nervous system just doesn't have anything to perceive. There's not as much to perceive. When we direct our attention inward to this inner core channel, we automatically have literally more of our constitution. There is an essence that becomes thickened and quickened at our core. If we think about it like this, the tiniest particle of life is a photon. It's this area where we're not really sure, is it energy or is it physicality? What is that? What is it? And the answer, this is what quantum science is based on. The answer is yes, it's energy and it's form. If you're looking for it to become energy, it is energy. If you're measuring it to determine if it is physical form, it's physical form. And this is what is so phenomenal about quantum science. It basically is teaching us that we find what we're looking for, that that matter responds to our conscious intention. Matter responds to our conscious focus. And so at this tiniest level, where the particles are so small, they're influenced by our conscious attention, by our thoughts, and by how we're focusing our mind. If we focus externally, the energy rushes externally. If we focus internally, the energy rushes internally. More of that rushing internally gives our sensory nervous system now something to feel. Oh, I can feel me in there. I can start to breathe in a manner that cultivates more of my essence in my deep core. And now my sensory system can find it, and then it can trust it. If my mind can find my deepest core truth, then it can trust it. If my mind can feel a sense of self deep in the core of this body, then my mind will have something to lean on, rather than it feeling like it's all alone and it has to make all the decisions and do all the things that life requires on its own, where the mind is only a part of who we are. It's not the wholeness of our being. And so it always feels like it's missing something, like there's something more that's needed to have some trusted sense of wholeness and well-being, because it's only a part of who we are. So when we're identified with the mind alone, we always have this feeling that, I don't know, something's missing, something's wrong. I need to get another degree, or I need to get a new job, or I need a new partner. I need something different because I don't feel whole. And it's like chasing our tail, it's a never ending story. So what we're doing is trying to teach people, come back inside, come back in here with your attention, pay attention there. Everything that you need is right here. And if you train your mind to listen and to perceive, it can recognize that it's not alone, and that there are actually billions of bits of information that are available to the mind all the time, so that the mind can make better decisions more easily. It can know what it wants to do. It can feel its way and perceive what needs to happen next. And so it's just a matter of changing how we're living, from being externally oriented to being internally oriented, allows us to really tap this wellspring of wisdom and really universal intelligence.
This is so exciting to me because I feel like there's so much that's contained in our central channel. And just to begin to change our focus inward can unlock so many pathways, and what you're sharing really brings up, this whole realm of self help, because when we're in the mind, it's like, what limiting belief do I need to fix? Or how am I, what trauma do I need to heal? But really, when we're inside of the body, it becomes so much clearer. And so, how, in your experience, how many people do you encounter that are really truly living in their bodies?
How many are living in their bodies when I meet them? I would say not very many. Most of the people that I meet are not living in their bodies. They're living in their heads. They're living in their heads because they learned to live in their heads early on. It served them. It helps them answer questions. It helps them protect themselves. It helps them, figure out how to strategize and live from this, smart place. But a smart place isn't necessarily right. It's just smart. It might not be filled with love. It might not be filled with wisdom. It might not be filled with an essence of life that we would actually enjoy living, but it might be smart. It might be the smart decision to make. And I can think back on my career, how many smart decisions I was encouraged to make from counselors or guides or consultants that I was working with. And every single time that I tried to do what they thought was smart for me to do, and then I thought it was smart to listen to them, I always regretted it. I always went back to just trusting my gut and finding what brought up joy and living from this place. And it ended up building an amazing institute with, employing lots of people, serving hundreds of thousands of people around the world, all because I decided to do it my way. And when people learn how to do that in an effective manner, it becomes more than smart. It becomes brilliant. It becomes a combination of intelligence and wisdom, and the essence of loving, joyful life experiences all combined. And that's the type of life that we're supposed to be living. And so when and I love, Emily, that you're even asking this question about, this whole idea about self-help and finding limiting beliefs and going after them and getting rid of them. If I can live in my mind and discover my limiting beliefs and change them to unlimiting beliefs, but there's actually no such thing because all beliefs are limiting in some way. As soon as we have a belief, we have something we have to defend. And as soon as we have to defend it, we're positioned in a dualistic world that now is relative. Everything that we experience is relative to these beliefs that we hold. And so what I love teaching people is, you're more than a believing machine. You are a wisdom rising. You are the infinite. You are completely capable of all sorts of creativity that any sort of beliefs will entrap you from experiencing. And so it's not that we have to walk around without any beliefs, but I really want people to learn how to trust their ability to be present with everything. If I can be present with whatever is happening, I'm free. If I have a belief that I have to defend, I'm not actually free. I might be more free than I was last year because I've changed some of my beliefs. But at the end of the day, if I've just gotten better beliefs, I'm still living in my head and I still don't have a tapped access to my deep core wisdom. I'm still possibly living in my head and not in my body. And so I would rather take that time and teach people how to live in their body, how to access their deep core wisdom and allow themselves to be free from needing these beliefs to hang on to decide who I am in any given moment. Because as we know, life changes rapidly and all of a sudden we're adapting and we have to change. And the more beliefs we have in place that we're depending on to decide if we're okay or not, the more we're going to have to reconfigure and restructure those things the moment life changes, like a pandemic happens or war breaks out or whatever might be happening in any given country.
Yes.
We have a lot to contend with. So it's a matter of like, let me get off that boat and on this other boat here altogether, because it's actually a better boat. It's more adaptable and flexible and malleable. And it doesn't mean that we become a doormat that doesn't have, something to respect or to be regarded. It's quite the opposite. We become the one who's filled with solutions when everybody else is running around consumed with problems, because wisdom is solution. Wisdom rises in the moment, knows what to do, but people aren't tapped into that. So the short answer to your question is, I don't meet very many people that are living in their body and therefore living in the boat that we're talking about right now.
This is so powerful. It is a big shift because you're right. I mean, so many people are living in their minds, and I believe that we're conditioned to do so from an early age. I think that, babies are in their bodies in a sense, and then, we're in this world that tells you kind of, you got to go to this school or you got to get an education, and that really shifts us into the mind. And so I think it is this transition of getting back into the body where there is so much wisdom available to us in any present moment. That is such a profound, shift that we're kind of going through collectively. I would love to go back to your personal story because I think it's so interesting that you were really immersed in energy, science and medicine and healing from an early age, but you had this profound awakening experience. And I'm curious for you how that really began to shift your experience of knowing yourself and also the work that you're doing in the world.
Oh, wow. It changed everything, right? And even though I was raised in a family that was discussing quantum science at the dinner table, my father and my mother were brilliant. My mother was the valedictorian of her class. My father was the salutatorian of the same class. My father developed all sorts of energy medicine techniques, and so we were in it. The conversation of all of this was what I grew up with. I've never gone to the doctor to take an antibiotic for some ailment or illness because these principles work for healing the body and maintaining, health and vitality. And so I was going along, in that reality, and went to school, opened a clinic, became a doctor, opened a clinic, started treating patients, sharing all these things with people. And then I had this feeling that there was something else. There was something more that I was supposed to be doing in this life. And I began developing headaches. And so I sought out meditation to relieve my headaches. And I not only relieved my headaches, I had a transcendental, multidimensional experience that I lit up in my third eye opening. I recognized that we are so much more than this physical being, that we are actually rays of consciousness. We are points of consciousness that are descending ourselves into this physical realm, and we are living this physical life as an experience. It's not who we are. It's something that we're doing. This is not who we are. It's what we're doing. And so as I lit up and woke up in this higher state of consciousness, I could see that everything that we're doing is actually being set up so that we can awaken to the truth of who we are. But we're so oblivious to it as this little experiment down here in this body. We're just oblivious to it, and we're running full steam ahead to outrun all of the obliviousness and the feelings of discontent that it leaves us with. And so I recognized that, wow, there's an entirely different approach to life that we could be living in. Now, intelligence was a high value in my family growing up, as I mentioned. And so here I was discovering this deep wisdom. Is what happened was I have an image that I show in some of the classes that I teach. I think I'll just show it here with us, okay? So I teach a lot of online classes and such. And so this is what was happening. I was minding my own business, walking around as this individual on the planet. And then all of a sudden I lit up here. And I could see the earth beneath me. It was so far beneath me, it was about the size of a marble. And I was embedded into it up to what would have been my knees, is what it felt like. I could see 360 degrees in every direction. So spherically, I could see above and below and in front and behind, to the left and to the right. As my third eye opened, instantly, like that, I could see everywhere. I had free will. I could pay attention there or there or there, but I literally could see in every direction in a light so brilliantly bright. It was 10 times brighter than the brightest day in the desert that I had ever experienced. And I wasn't doing any drugs. I wasn't taking ayahuasca. I wasn't, in that. And it was just, it happened. And so I spent the next 10 years of my life really figuring out how it happened, how I could return to it, how I could teach other people to access this version of themselves. Whether they ever had the visual experience or not was irrelevant, I found. I found that what really mattered is if people could feel their way into this realm, because this realm felt, the best way for me to describe it is to say there was nothing missing. There was nothing broken. There was nothing wrong. There was nowhere to go. There was nothing to accomplish. I had always been here and I would always be there. I was this eternal presence, period. And there was no debate about it. It was just what was. And I could sense and feel that what was happening was this brilliant light that I was in was becoming a vibration as it passed through me, this ray of light that I was, and into this version of me that was on the planet. And it was light becoming love is the best way for me to describe it. It was light becoming love. And that's what I knew that we were. I knew that we are the light and that we are here as love, that the vibration that gets created as the light was starting to compress itself into this ray and descending to the earth was a vibrational frequency that we call love. And it was everywhere. There was nothing but that happening. And I knew that this was true for everyone. And I knew that we were breathing our way into, through this universal breath that was happening, into the physical form. We were being breathed here into this dimension. And so sounds kind of crazy and kind of out there and a little bit out of context to try to talk about it in this short of a, moment. But what I really want to say about it is that we are here as the light that we are seeking. And so the reason that people seek enlightenment, or they seek to know more, is that they're trying to find who they really are. And the fact is, they are what they're looking for. It's right behind their eyes. It's on the inside.
Yeah.
And so we dupe ourselves seeking all the time because we're running away from what it is that we're actually looking for. It's right here. So it's really an amazing puzzle and maze, but it isn't a mystery. It is not a mystery. It only appears to be a mystery to those that are seeking the way that we're talking. And so I teach people how to land back in here, drop back into the core, and start feeling their way in to the reality that I'm trying to describe is the truth of what's going on here and the truth of who we are. So what you're onto it. You get it. You get it.
I have chills as you're sharing, and it's funny because I have a similar photo that's on the screensaver of my phone, which is basically like what you showed to me is like an oversoul container, which is our light that we embody. And I feel like that's why meditation, breath work, whatever it is that allows us to go within and connect with that and understand and have that deep knowing can be such a powerful tool. I have had experience similar to what you're describing, but for you, you've really been able to recreate the state at will and show other people how to do that. So I want to ask you, in your book, you share about a moment when your father had just transitioned and you were about to step on stage in front of hundreds of people, lead a multi-day event, and you received some really shocking news. And I'm curious how you were able to shift your reality through the quantum flip method.
Beautiful. So what happened was I learned something from my father's will that was very disturbing, and it was very emotional for me, and it kind of buckled me over. And in that moment, I knew that I was being impacted in a way that people are impacted in this life. We get overwhelmed, we get buckled over by things that blow our circuits, etc. And there was an extraordinary message inside of this that was like a retraction of love to me. It felt like a withdrawal of love and support. And so what happened in that moment was I learned that that I was basically not being included in very much of my Father's will, and it didn't make sense to me. I have some ideas about what it was about, but too much to go into here. But the bottom line is there was great emotional pain, and so I immediately had this sensation of, as I mentioned, this feels like a withdrawal of love and support, and devastating. And so what I began immediately implementing, because of what I had learned over the years, this thing that I was describing to you, this one was 20 years ago. And so when I first opened up to this, and so in those first 10 years, I started, turn my life into a living laboratory to figure out how to reproduce all of that. And I've spent then the years since then teaching other people how to do that, and, just being in this, in a very big way. So I knew what to do. And this was like the biggest that I could have imagined. And still, I knew what I had to do. So I started doing the work that I teach, which is, finding where in the body the impact was, and learning how to work with it and breathe with it up and down the central channel and anchor myself in the body. Because in a moment like that, Boyd, we shoot into our heads, we shoot up in here trying to find understanding and trying to wrap our minds around it, when that's really not what we should be doing in moments like that. It's not about wrapping our minds around it. It's about becoming present with it. And there's a difference. Our thinking mind wants to understand, but we have a better use of the mind that we could be instilling, which is training it to just be present with what is, instead of writing a story about it or understanding it or judging it or deciding if it's right or wrong, or then having to deal with the effects of deciding that it's wrong. And then, all of the guilt or the anger or the whatever comes after that. It's all because of the story that we're writing. And so I knew in that moment that I had to not write a story. Do not write a story about this, Sue. Just be with it. Just be with this. And so if as I was implementing the practices that I teach everyone, as I was practicing what I preach, basically, I began to be able to stand and breathe and go out on the stage and teach the 3-day retreat with so much grace flowing through the whole scenario. And by the time the retreat was over, I had had 3 days with no time to think about what had happened, only time because I happened to be teaching people the very practices that I was needing to do. So that was helpful. So I was teaching them and I was doing it myself. And by the end of the 3 days, I realized that the reason that I didn't receive the support from this will was because I didn't need the support from the will. I didn't need, it wasn't about the money, but it was about the support, atta girl, you did great, and here's for you, and I love you and cherish you. That didn't come. And what I realized was, if I would have needed that, it would have come. That would have been what I received. That I didn't receive that type of support because I didn't need it. I was so much bigger than I thought I was. And that showed me how to find that bigness that was elusive to me up until that moment in time. So this greatest pain became the greatest gift in a 3-day period when I didn't even try to figure it out. I just kept coming down into the body, breathing with where I felt I'd gotten, socked in my gut. I kept breathing with that area, anchoring in the body the way that I was teaching the audience to do, and working with it in these ways until the energy began to rise up through my core and really transcend my primitive brain, that is the part of us that makes us think we need the help, we need the support, we need this to be okay. And it was able to transcend that and truly rise up into what has been referred to in our ancient texts as the promised land, which is really in our own physiology, into these high brain centers where we are equipped to be present with life in the abundance that we are. And it was able to rise because I didn't keep it shoved down inside of me as a story that was resentful and, and abandoned and all sorts of things that we can come up with. None of that was happening because I was allowing it to do what it was meant to do for me. And it was meant to show me my greatness. But we misinterpret these kinds of life happenings, and we think that they are moments that should never have happened, moments that should have gone differently, moments that were wrong. And a byproduct of that is we disperse our energy onto the story of the will. We disperse our energy onto the history of what happened back then. And now we're on object instead of on subject. So in those 3 days, I was able to come back on subject and let it be something different for me. It changed my life, truly, again, forever.
Such a profound story. And I mean, I'm just having this kind of like aha download about healing and about the way that we maybe accumulate disease in the body. Because as you're describing that process, you said that you went right into the body and found where it was located. And I feel like for so many, there's a process of judging the experience and then judging the emotion. But what you're sharing is the opposite of allowing the experience and embracing the emotion.
Absolutely. We have to allow the experience. It happened, right? Even though our egos want to change the fact that it happened. And then we dig our heels in and we lock down and say, no, that shouldn't have happened. And we go about telling you, you shouldn't have done that. However, he was gone. He wasn't here. I couldn't have that conversation with him, and not in this way, right? So, even if I had been prone to that, it wouldn't have been possible. And this is the case with so many people. They're judging the situation, making it wrong, putting the brakes on, not being present with it. When any minute that we're deciding we wish something wasn't happening, we're not being present with that thing. We're not being present with it. We are in resistance to it, in rejection to it. And the byproduct of resisting or rejecting is what creates the emotions of guilt and shame and anger and keeps them around, because we're not letting this flow. These don't get to flow either. So now we're stuck with anger and frustration or abandonment or resentment or whatever. And those emotions create chemistries in the body that, if allowed to continue, they create the chemistries of cellular breakdown. And disease is a natural byproduct of that. And that's all disease is. It's a collection of unresolvedness where we were not present. We have emotional reactions to not being present with this thing and having judged it. And now those emotional states are creating chemistries, and those chemistries are creating cellular dysfunction and harm to the body, because we're not supposed to be doing that in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes from.
And this makes so much sense because, and it goes back to that point of embodiment, because, the body is constantly giving us clues and signals, and we're able to, attune to that, which is maybe off balance, or maybe, the emotion that is arising. But if we're not fully in our body, then we can maybe miss some of those signals, and then it turns into something that's more escalated.
100% what my book is about. It is about come home to the body, because the body is trying to tell you all the time. It's trying to tell the mind. The body is trying to tell the mind. They're working together. They're trying to work together. They're supposed to work together. We invented both of them. We are not the body and we are not the mind. We invented both of them. They are subsets of us. And yet we live in such a way that the mind is controlling the whole thing. And it's like, wait a second, you're not even in charge. Just sit over there for a second. And it just keeps getting, in this driver's seat that it doesn't belong in. It's just that. And that's the false self. That's how we invent the ego, is when this one takes over. So the body and the mind are supposed to be working together. The body is constantly telling the mind, oh, by the way, you're not resolved over here. Look, you've got this knot in your stomach. You're not okay. Look, the tension in your shoulders. Look, you're not okay. You're not breathing. What are you doing? And the mind is like, not even home. It's off here on the story, and it's over here on the problems. And it's like, who are you? I don't even remember you, right? I kind of remember you, but I'm busy. So here's how I describe it to people. The soul speaks to the body, and the body speaks to the mind. And the mind doesn't listen because it's busy off writing stories. So we have to train the mind to come home, listen to the body, because it's speaking the language of the soul. It's translating the language of the soul. So, and that's who we are. So, what I'm really doing, Emily, is just telling people, you're not the mind. that has a spirit. You're not the mind that has a soul. You don't have a soul. You are a soul. So when people say it soothes my soul, I know they're identified as the mind. I would
Mhm.
never say it soothes my soul. I am the soul. And this is what I learned in those moments. And that's how it changed my life. I changed seats. That's what the quantum flip is. Everyone needs the quantum flip. We need to realize we are not the mind. We are not the personality. We are not the ego. We are the soul, and we are being suppressed by the voice of the mind that has taken over, and it's not even listening to us. It's like artificial intelligence. We invented this thing, and now it's running the show. And it's like, wait a second, get back here. Who do you think you are? These thoughts that you think, these stories that you write, stop it. You're making me crazy. And that's really how we need to be retraining. That's not how we do the retraining. It's a little more loving than you're making me crazy. It's a little more like, come here, we got this, it's okay. Let's work together.
Yes, the integration. I love that. And you talk about, the soulful self versus the protective personality, which I love. How do we begin to really embody more of the soulful self and live from the front side of the model?
Yeah. So the front side of the model, and when I refer to it in the book, it's about living as the soul. It's truly about that. Instead of waiting until life hands you something and then reacting to it, be the creator that you came here to be. Create your life. Create it. Don't think you're at the effect of the outer world, because the outer world is just a movie that we are walking through. We're projecting a movie. I have another image here that will help this. There are 11 billion bits of information that are bombarding, compressing, collecting together, and hitting the earth. This is like the bottom of that same image. If we were to look at this is coming in, hitting the earth, rising up and cycling around. And then we project some of that energy out in front of us. And that's the movie that we're walking around in. And so this is showing how that happens. So this one is kind of showing that same image. We hit the earth, we rise up, and we cycle around. And inside of that recycling, we build a body. And then if we look at it like how that operates in the world, we compress, we hit the earth, we rise up and cycle around. And then we start projecting that energy out in front of us. I'm going to go have an experience. I'm going to go have a life and create a life. And so we're projecting a movie onto a movie screen. If my hand were a movie screen, we are literally projecting a movie onto that movie screen, and we're walking around inside of that movie, just like that. So if we don't like the movie that we're, in, we have to change up this projector. So to know that we're living as this projector, the soulful self, we will know because we're joyous. It's just joyous. It's not happy, it's joyous. I mean, it can be happy, but it's not like just be happy. It's not like that. That's a personality trait. The soul is joyous. It's bliss. It's ananda. It is made of wholeness. So it's not missing anything. And so we are also both and when we're living on the front side of the model as a creator, as the soulful self. We are interested in, there's some truth in this and there's some truth in that, and let's weave it together and find something that works instead of right and wrong, good and bad, this dualistic realm. The soulful self, the front side of the model, is finding a third option. It's it's the Trinity. It's that trilogy that takes us out of duality and into a new version, a new way of looking at life. So it's innovative. We're being creative when we're operating on the front side of the model. We are not seeing problems. We're seeing ways to affirm our greatness. Like my dualistic personality, I got thrown into the moment I read the will was, and then woo, I had to grab and land in the body and use the anchor points that I teach about and breathing in the channel and find where I was being affected and breathe with that so that I could go from right or wrong, good or bad, should have happened, shouldn't have happened, into, hey, this happened. And somehow there's a benefit in here. I don't know what it is yet, but there's a blessing in this. And so as the mind was not allowed to write the story, It was able to sense and feel the energies rushing up and down through the body as I was breathing up and down the channel the way that I teach people to do. And all of a sudden, this trap door of the primitive brain just flew open, and I was able to feel and sense a greater version of my wholeness than I was even able to sense before. So when people are living on the front side of the model, they are feeling a greater and greater version of their wholeness every day because of the practices that we're doing inside of the work that I'm teaching. You follow? So how do we know that we're there? We're joyous, we're embracing, we're adventurous. It doesn't mean you have to like get up every day and go on a grand adventure, but it means when something happens today that you weren't anticipating, do you resist it and reject it instantly? Or are you adventurous and curious? Become curious. Just be curious about life. Just lean in and be in wonderment. And what happens is we start engaging on a soulful level. The mind rejects and the soul attracts. The heart and the soul are magnetic and the mind is electric. Now we need both to engage and propel ourselves out into the world, but one took over and it shouldn't have. It should have been a democracy, not a tyranny. Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like as you're sharing, it's like I'm seeing the energy centers in the body. I'm seeing the chakras and how they have an innate wisdom and ability to allow us to live as the soulful self,
You bet.
because it is like that pleasure, connected to our body, being rooted, and then, being in our heart space. I mean, all of that of activating within the central channel allows us to really embody the soulful self as you're sharing.
100% accurate. Each chakra is a level of consciousness. It's an aspect of our wholeness. So there are aspects or attributes of our whole self that each of the chakras hold, that they represent. They are frequency versions of who we are. So there's a part of our wholeness that is our anchoredness, and a part of our wholeness that is our wisdom, and a part of our wholeness that is our conscious decision-making capacity, our mental body's capacity, and our sense of self comes from that. There's a part of our wholeness that is unconditionally loving and present and capable of dissolving issues. And there's a part of us that is in charge of manifesting and landing and articulating and producing and being in action. And there's a part of our wholeness that is our awareness of our multidimensionality, that we are here as this high frequency oversoul itself. We are that. We don't have that. We are that here. And there's a part of us that knows that. And there's a part of us that just knows that we are heaven earth, that this is all okay. And what we want is to be able to access all of those parts of us all the time and have them working together in an integrated fashion, because power alone of the third chakra isn't okay. But power when associated with love is a beautiful thing. The power of love is exponentially magnified when those two levels of consciousness are working together. Love alone could be a doormat, but when connected to the power center, it's never going to be a doormat. It's always going to be, hey, now don't you mess with me. I know what's going on here. This is a bigger yes than what this situation looks like, or what you're trying to say right now, what this person is trying to say, or that situation is presenting. And so on the front side of the model, as the soulful self, we know, because we are integrated. Living as the soulful self is an integrated individual living in their body as a soul, living as the soul in the body. So often when we start teaching people to get into their body, they're already identified as the mind. So they're trying to be the mind in the body. And that's okay, because when the mind is in the body, it starts to dissolve that differential and the soul starts to emerge. So it's okay, but it's not the same person. They will emerge as a different version of themselves than the one they were when they started becoming interested in embodiment.
Oh, I totally can see that. And this piece of integration gets me so excited. I mean, there's just so much, Dr. Sue, that you're sharing about that I absolutely love and that I feel like is completely life changing. One thing for me is this whole concept of building new circuitry, because I feel like so many times we can think, oh, well, I'm not good at creating, or I'm not in my power, or my throat, chakra isn't fully activated. And you are really teaching some profound, teachings around building new circuitry. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit more about that process.
Absolutely. Every issue in life is a circuitry issue and it's nothing more. That's it. The amount of circuits that we have animated and activated will determine how much of the soulful self gets to have a voice, gets to have action, gets to come out to the surface of life. So think about it like the soulful self is here in this deep core center, and it is wanting to emerge and rise out and action in life and have the life that it came here to have. And if it doesn't have the circuits in place to do that, then it doesn't get to express. And what happens is the mind, is just taking over and trying to run the show because it's not getting any support from any direction that it can tell. So when we're building circuits, we're building first electromagnetic energy circuits. First, it is a pathway. So think about it like meridians that run through the body, like those pathways of energy that acupuncture utilizes or acupressure utilizes. They are streams of energy that are flowing like little rivers through the body. And the nervous system develops as a byproduct of those streams of energy in the developing embryo. First, meridians exist, and then the nervous system starts to quicken or create a physical version, a tangible tissue version of those invisible energy streams of light that are called meridians. And so there's an invisible version of us and a visible version of us. And the invisible version would be these energy streams. The visible version would be nerve pathways. So first we work with the invisible, and then we start to establish neurocircuits. So first we learn to work with the invisible energy field, and then it starts to establish neural pathways that are synapsing together, kind of memorizing and sealing the deal, keeping it sustainable. That's what the nervous system is really designed. It's so interesting because so many people are obsessed with how the brain works and how the nervous system operates, et cetera, because it's this tangible thing that we can dissect in a laboratory, and we can trace where they go, and we can see how the little dendrites, pass these bits of information along neural pathways. But there are two systems that run our body. The nervous system is only one of them. The other system actually built the nervous system in the developing embryo, and it's the electromagnetic energy system. And that electromagnetic energy system is more important than the nervous system in that it will tell the nervous system how to develop. So it's profound, it's foundational, it's the master system. And first we are building electromagnetic energy circuits, and then the nerve system starts to establish nerve synapses to accommodate the circuits that we're building. It's very easy to do. Anyone can do it. People have been doing it all of their lives. They just didn't know. And so we're bringing consciousness to this so that we can consciously and intentionally build more circuitry to be able to speak our truth, build more circuitry to be able to allow our creativity to emerge and to express in the world, and build the circuitry to enable greater patience or greater calmness, etc. The way that the circuits are built are, it's kind of a practice that people have to learn to do, but it's easy to do. It takes seconds to do. It takes a while to learn how to do it, but only because we're just not used to doing that. And so I teach people how to begin to come into the body, anchor themselves there, breathe up and down the central channel, and then life will show them where they need to start building these circuits by when someone comes in the room and we have a reaction to them, we're going to feel that reaction in our body. And if we pay close attention, we will notice that we're feeling it either more here, or more here, or more in the gut, or more low in the belly, or along the spine, or in the shoulders. There are all sorts of signals that the body is telling us that we don't have circuits in place, because if we had circuits in place, we wouldn't have the reaction to the person that we're having if all of our circuits were firing the way that they're supposed to. So I have another image that might be helpful in what we're trying to describe. So that energy descends down, hits the earth from this first image that we were looking at, right? So what I'm showing you now is just a close-up of this bottom version, and it is here hitting the earth and rising up and cycling around and around and around. This is the ideal. And for most people, this is how it's operating. It descends to the earth and rises up. And as it does, it has to circumvent areas where we have what we would call blockages, but there's actually no such thing as a blockage. There's only a gap in our circuitry. If there's a gap in the circuitry, we take the road of least resistance. There's no highway there. I'm going to go around it. There's no road there. I'm going to go around it. And that wobbling, rising energy creates a distortion in the field. Now, this person is standing here looking out through a distorted energy field very differently than this person looking out through a perfected energy field. This person is going to see a world that doesn't support them, a life that is unkind and uncaring and is not filled with opportunities, etc. But none of it's true. It's just a misperception based upon what's going on the inside. So what we're doing is teaching people how to notice when you have a reaction to somebody who comes in the room or says something to you, it's because this energy is hitting that and it's hitting it. And then it has to go around it. It's rushing up. It's hitting this one and has to go around it. It's rushing up and hitting it. So this becomes the knot in your stomach, the tightness in your chest, the lump in your gut or in your throat, etc. So it's literally the energy is trying to rise and it's hitting this area and then having to go around it. When it's hitting that, that's when we feel the contracted area inside of us. So what I'm teaching people how to do is how to grab a hold of that and start to carve a pathway right through that thing that it's been circumventing. And then we have a super highway of this deep core wisdom all the way up to our consciousness. And it changes everything. It changes everything about our lives. So just think of it. 11 billion bits of information are bombarding us every millisecond. And it doesn't come to our head. It comes to our gut. And then it rises from the gut through the heart. And it rises from the heart to the primitive brain to these high brain centers. And if it has enough momentum, it will pierce right through the primitive brain and land us in these high brain centers. No problem. But because we've been spending so much of our attention on the outer world, there's not a lot of power in here to get this momentum to go through those gaps and build a superhighway. We're too dispersed. So we're teaching people how to come back onto core and rise up through this and learn that when we have an area in the body that's talking, that we listen to it and we go back and we learn how to breathe right through that area in a way that allows for a superhighway to be built so that those 11 billion bits of information can rise as this wisdom filtered through love right into our conscious awareness of a world that we were completely unaware of when we were externally oriented, and focused on the outer.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I love shifting it from feeling like there's a block or there's something, missing to really reframing it in terms of looking at building new circuitry, because that's empowering. And that's, there's endless possibilities there.
And everyone can do it. And that's the key that is it's so astounding to me that we make life so difficult and we have so many reasons for our difficulties. And we go into the psychology and we go into the counseling and we go into the story, and the answers are not there because that's not the cause of the problem. That's the causal level is way back here. Deep in the core, we just didn't know. We got dispersed. Yes, therapies can help us to identify, wow, you had an abusive childhood. Of course, you're always on defense and looking for this. And you have to learn to soften and be present with things. But I find that it is so much it's so beneficial for people, even people that are in therapies and doing these things. And I have many, many therapists that come into this work so that they can work with people both and, so that
Yeah.
they can work with them with the conversation, but they can work with them with the embodiment of that, so that these things line up so much more quickly for people. It enhances everything. This work enhances all of the work in the outer world, because all of those things in the outer world are a byproduct of us not realizing that we actually are the soul that has gotten splatted and dispersed into this idea that we're a personality, and we get embedded into the mind, and and we're off to the races in Storyville. So this is about coming back home and allowing that to be perceived very differently.
I love this so much. I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. And, as we kind of wrap up the conversation, I'd love if you could share just, a few of your personal, practices maybe for really getting into the body.
So the practices that I've been describing are what they are. So there are ways, things that we could share specifically on how to anchor oneself in the body. One being pulling the shoulder blades together and dropping them down. There is an anchoring in the connective tissues behind the heart, the literal heart muscle, that connect it into the heart chakra by settling it and stabilizing it. And so when we pull the shoulder blades, kind of roll the shoulders back and down, pull the blades together just gently, and then drop them lower, it anchors and tethers that heart center. And as the heart center is tethered, it begins to flourish more readily. And there is an anchor below the heart that is the thing that most people miss. And it's called Mulabanda. And it is a process of truly gathering our energies at the root of the spine. There is so much integrative energy that resides, called Kundalini energy, at the base of the spine, that allows for us to truly integrate all of these chakras and carve that superhighway ultimately. And the more that we can draw our energy down into this lower tip of the spine area, the more we can gently begin to access that energy and allow it to start to serve up through the body's integrative processes. And so there's a process called Mulabanda, and Muladhara is the root chakra. Mulabanda means we're going to lock in at the root chakra. And so it is done by squeezing the muscles at the base of the pelvic bowl. Okay, so what's that mean? It's basically like, if you were going to the bathroom and you had to stop the stream instantly, you would squeeze certain muscles to get that to happen. And if you squeeze those muscles, you're in the neighborhood of actually activating the very depths of this pelvic bowl area that we need to activate at the tip of the spine. So if you were going to the bathroom and you had to stop the stream instantly, you would squeeze certain muscles. So you just squeeze them. And people are like, I don't know if I'm doing it right. And it just feels awkward at first. But we just want it to squeeze it with everything you've got. Just squeeze it and then relax it by 1/2. And that's how you would work with it. And then relax that by 1/2. And that's kind of an amount of consciousness that we need to have there always. We need to have some awareness at the base of the spine always. So if you squeeze those muscles and then you squeeze the blades and drop them down, and then you roll your eyes up, you'll see that there's muscle contraction behind the eyes. You can feel that. You can feel your shoulder blades together and down. And then you can feel this activation at the base of the pelvic bowl. Now there's a channel that runs in between all three of them, connecting them. And that's what I'm teaching people to learn how to find. And so if you roll your eyes up and you take a breath from above your head, right down through the center of your brain, right through your throat, through your heart, squeeze those blades all the way to the belly. Now squeeze that Mulabanda and then exhale and shoot the breath down into the earth. Now release the Mulabanda, inhale up from the earth into the belly. Now squeeze those muscles again at the pelvic bowl and squeeze your shoulder blades and roll your eyes up. And you're going to exhale that breath up through your heart, up through your throat, up through the center of your brain, and shoot it out the top of your head. Shoot it out the top of your head like a whale in a blowhole. So we want to keep the chin level, because when we tilt the nose upward, it kinks off the energy that's trying to exit. So we want to keep it right here and exhale and let it come right into the center of the brain and then shoot it right out the top of the head. So we want to have clear passageway through the central channel so that it has an opportunity for the energy, the photons, to move freely. So now let's take a breath from overhead, right down, just imagine it. You're breathing from the top of your head, right down through the center of the brain, through the throat, into the heart, all the way, draw it into the belly, big belly breath. The belly gets big on the inhale. Now squeeze Mulabanda at the base of the pelvic bowl, squeeze those muscles and shoot the breath down through that contraction right into the earth. And then inhale up from the earth, right into the belly again, keeping those muscles squeezed, and then exhale up through the heart, up through the throat, through the center of the brain, and out the top of the head. So that's a central channel breath. Now, the more that someone does that, the more they will start to feel a gathering, a centering, a grounding in the body. It's a deeper grounding than if we just pay attention in our heart. Now, paying attention in your heart is very helpful. You can pay attention in your heart, put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, and one hand on your belly helps to ground the heart even lower. If you do heart and then belly and then squeeze those muscles at the base of the pelvic bowl and take a belly breath down through your body into the belly, as if you're just drawing this breath into the body, and squeeze that Mulabanda, and then exhale, just shoot the breath down into the earth. Just imagine that you're just planting yourself, just breathing it down into the earth. Now release the Mulabanda, breathe up from the earth. Now squeeze it again, and then exhale up through the belly, up through the heart, up through the heart, up through the throat, up through the center of the brain, and shoot it out the top of the head. Inhale from overhead, the center of the brain, into the throat, into the heart, into the belly. Now squeeze Mulabanda and exhale, shoot it down into the earth. Inhale, release, then inhale, then squeeze it again. And then exhale up through the belly, heart, throat, center of the brain, and out the top of the head. So when we do this in a repeated fashion, we begin to anchor low in the body. And the more anchored we are, we'll look around the room and the room will seem brighter. It will seem lighter. It will seem like there's more vitality in the space in between the particles that we see, in between the objects that we see. We can start to see life kind of dancing in the space in between. And it's very real. If people are, seeking to learn, to see, to relate to this energy, if they go outside and do this practice, and then they look to the trees, there's a lot of vital force in the air, in the fresh air, and you'll be able to see energy between you and the trees across the yard or the space that you're sitting in, and it allows people to start to recognize there's something to this, and I need to discover it. I need to train myself to perceive this invisible world. It doesn't need to be quite so invisible to us. It's only invisible because we were never trained to pay attention to it. So as we begin paying attention to it, we begin to relate to it. Now, this central channel breathing in this anchored way, rolling the eyes, squeezing the blades, Mulabanda, and then, just really feeling ourselves in this central channel and breathing up and down it, we'll start to cultivate so many things. And then the very next thing that I would do, and this is something that I teach in my coursework, is when something happens that's upsetting you, your mind, watch your mind. It's going to go to, why do you do that? Why is this happening? It's about the why. And instead of going into the why, just ask a better question. Ask where in my body am I activated when I'm upset about this? Where is it getting to me? Right? Where is it getting to me? And is it getting to me in my gut? Do I feel a charge in my stomach? Do I feel energy in my chest? Where is it? And then I would invite you to just squeeze it back, to hug it on the inside, to let it know, let the body know that your mind is listening finally. The mind is finally listening to what the body is trying to say. And together, breathing that up and down the central channel with special attention to this area is golden. it will start to build the electromagnetic energy circuits that will become neurocircuits, that will become a sustainability that we can now operate from, being present with all sorts of things that used to frighten us because we didn't have the circuitry in place to be okay no matter what was going on, because we were just so used to being defensive and protective and trying to, survive in this world. But life is truly meant for so much more than survival. It's not how we're supposed to be living. It's so beyond that. So I'll stop there and see how we're doing.
Dr. Sue, thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing those tools. They are seriously so helpful. I felt a dramatic shift in my energy, and I'm really excited to try that out in nature as well. And I imagine doing that on a repetitive basis and building that circuitry. I can only imagine, the new pathways that develop. So thank you so much. I highly recommend everybody getting this book, The Energy Codes. I can see why it was an instant national bestseller. It's packed with so much wisdom. And for anybody that wants to learn more, that wants to work with you, I know that you offer teacher trainings and all different ways of working with you and furthering this teaching and education. And so they can visit you at drsuemorter.com.
Yes, it's drsuemorter.com. Yeah, the ER is a deal. People sometimes misspell that. So easy to find online and all sorts of places. Absolutely.
Awesome. Dr. Sue, thank you so, so much for joining us. So
Absolutely.
grateful.
My pleasure. Thank you, Emily. And thank you for the work that you're doing in the world.